Hi there, Brittany. Thank you so much for taking the opportunity to share your recovery journey with myself in therapy and your experience with the Anxiety Center website. We're really looking forward to hearing your story tonight. If you could, would you mind sharing your anxiety story with us? How long you suffered, the symptoms you struggled with, and what was most troubling for you during the recovery process?
Growing up, I did experience somewhat of anxiety. It was more so, uh, it, it's hard to explain. For example, I was really scared of storms, thunderstorms. We lived in the Midwest, and that always seemed to bother me anytime it would storm. I would get really anxious. I was always anxious in school. Um, it's really funny because they would call your name to take roll, and I remember always having butterflies in my stomach, uh, just waiting for them to call my name, and it never really made sense to me. But I lived a very stressful, hectic, chaotic, to say the least, lifestyle. We have four children now, three at the time. But I was very much a worrier, a perfectionist, a control freak, and all of that manifested. It wasn't until I think it reached its peak in May of 2015.
Mhm.
I came home from work one day. It was just mounting, and I experienced my first panic attack um, that day. It was May 22nd. I'll never forget it. But it it changed my life, it seemed like, at the time. And I didn't experience symptoms associated with it until a few days later. And I think that's what scared me the most. Was it wasn't immediate. It wasn't like when I experienced a panic attack, it wasn't a short one. It lasted for hours because I didn't know what was going on. I was home with my husband, uh, and he was trying to calm me down, and it just felt like how everyone else describes it. It just feels like you're dying.
Mm.
I kept asking him to take me to the emergency room. And what had kind of prompted it was it felt like my throat was closing.
Mm.
Um, and it just scared me to death. And I remember I took laps. It happened at my house, and I took laps around my house for probably 3 hours, just trying to calm myself down. And I think I just kept working myself up more and more. But it eventually, I calmed myself down, and it went away. And it wasn't until 3 days later I started experiencing dizziness. It was like vertigo almost. And then the day after that, it was like dizziness associated with shortness of breath. And that was the day that I went to the emergency room the first time. And I went. They told me that there was nothing wrong. So I went back to work, continue to live the hectic, running three kids around, working. I worked as a project manager for a large farm corporation. I didn't take any downtime. And I remember being at work, and I could not focus. I was still dizzy. My memory was shot, and it just seemed like it all went downhill from there. Uh, and I think it was 2 days later, I was back in the emergency room. I was having burning skin. I kept trying to explain it to him that it wasn't chest pains. It was right in my chest area. It wasn't necessarily a chest pain, but it was a burning feeling associated with nausea and dizziness, and all they could seem to tell me was it was a sinus infection.
Mm.
So there again, I got no reprieve, no relief. Unfortunately, our local medical, I don't think, is that versed in panic attacks and anxiety. So they just kept brushing it off, and the symptoms kept mounting and kept escalating, getting worse and worse. And eventually I found myself at the emergency room yet again. And they're running CAT scans and MRIs, and I'm having just it seems like every symptom that they list on the anxiety center is what I was experiencing. But I was getting no answers. And this went on for probably 2 weeks. And finally, after MRIs and CT scans, I had a swallow test done because I felt like there was something stuck in my throat. I had a scope done where they actually gave me anesthetics and put me to sleep because I had such horrific acid reflux that it would take my breath away. And each time, test after test, it was coming back saying everything was fine, everything was normal. So at that point, they associated it towards panic, anxiety, and depression. And they, of course, their solution was medication. That was about the only solution. They never recommended really therapy. I opted to not take the medication. I tried it for a few days, and I was one of the, I think you guys could say 30% that it either works or it doesn't, and it most definitely did not work for me. I did not like the way that it made me feel. But I was very fortunate, though. Because of my control freak in me, I immediately got on the internet and I wanted to self-help my way out of it. And go that route. And I happened to stumble onto the anxiety center website. So my struggle, although it was very short, I felt like it was an extreme case. I really did work myself up. I thought that I had done permanent damage to myself because I had never felt like that before. And to speak of what symptoms bothered me the most, it's so hard to say because I had health anxiety. So every symptom bothered me. And it wasn't necessarily the symptoms, a specific one or a set of them. It was all of them. And it was more the symptom mix and the changes that bothered me so much. Like in the beginning, it was dizziness and depersonalization. It was facial numbness. It was memory loss, extreme fatigue. I before was a go from the moment I woke up in the morning until I literally just passed out in bed. And that was my daily routine, and it didn't bother me. And then I went from going 100 mile an hour to literally having to hold the walls as I walked down our hallway at home, just to take a shower. Or it was a good day for me if I managed to make it out of bed and do a single load of laundry. And that's coming from someone who used to clean my house from top to bottom 12 hours a day, or I would work a 12-hour day and go to a ball game and come home and clean my house. Like, that was how impactful it was to me. I was bedridden for the first 3 months of my struggle. And it wasn't a certain symptom mix that I had trouble with. It would be one set, and then it would manifest into another set, and it would be chest pains, upper back pain. It would mimic almost what a female would go through that's experiencing a heart attack. So I would run to the emergency room. They would do an EKG. Everything came back normal, and I'm just sitting there like, what is going on with my body?
Would you mind sharing your struggle with some of the intrusive thoughts that you dealt with during your recovery journey?
In the beginning, I never had any problems with sleep from the aspect of like adrenaline or anything like that. Mine was intrusive thoughts of, I'm not going to wake up if I sleep. If I fall asleep, I'm not going to wake up, and I'm never going to see my family or my kids again. And to me, that was an intrusive thought, extremely irrational. I would stay up until I literally could not take it anymore, forcing myself to stay up from fear of not thinking that I was going to wake up again. And after waking up day after day, it slowly wore off. It was of, the health, anxiety, it was all or nothing thinking and catastrophic thinking big time. Every little ache and pain I would immediately associate it with worst case scenario stuff, MS, heart attack, ALS, everything like that. I would watch TV, and there would be mention of like suicidal tendencies, and I was really it scared me, especially because most of the time those were associated with the antidepressant medication. So that was another reason why I was so hell-bent on not taking it.
So at this point, how would you rate your overall status of your recovery from a scale of, say, 0 to 100? Where would you say you're at this point?
Would like to categorize it in 3 different parts.
Okay.
As far as functioning day to day, how I would explain activities, things that I participate in on a daily basis from before I had anxiety or panic attacks or whatever in May of 2015 to now, I am 100% better.
Great.
I function and I do things that I want to do every day.
Good for you.
I go to concerts. My husband and I just went to a 3-day concert that was 2 states away. There were at any given time 50,000 people there every day, and that did not faze me one single bit. I enjoyed it. I loved it. It felt like I was me again, finally. I've went to weddings. I've participated in weddings. We went to an amusement park. I rode roller coasters. I am very proud and happy with myself because every single day I do exactly what I want to do, regardless of how I felt. And it was a gradual thing. There was a time when I could not stay at home by myself. I could not leave my husband's side. I did not drive. I did not leave home. That was probably the first 3 or 4 months, and I started drive. It tore me up to have to drive or to be by myself, but gradually I got better and better, and now it's an afterthought. I don't even think about it anymore. Yeah, it does not. I love being around people, and it does not faze me one single bit to be at the store by myself, driving by myself. And it's not just locally. I'll drive 2 hours to a bigger city by myself. I took my kids to like an ice show. Like I said, functioning wise and activities wise, I do everything that I want, and I love it.
And what would you rate your symptom recovery from 0 to 100?
I would say 90 to 95%.
Wow, awesome.
I know when I've pushed it. They will spike up a little bit, but it's not enough to influence what I want to do.
Okay.
And even if they do spike up, it doesn't really faze me. I know what it's associated with. I know my stress is up. I know what to do to get it back down. But it doesn't alter my daily function whatsoever.
If you don't mind sharing with us a little bit about your experience with the Anxiety Center website, did you find the website helpful?
Like I said, I was very fortunate, but I felt like I was very aggressive, trying to find someone that I could associate myself with that knew what I was going through after my panic attack. Um, and by God's grace, and I really do feel like it, he helped steer me in the direction of you guys. Um, Led me to your website about a month after my first panic attack. And once I found it, it was such a relief because I was able to associate and and put, I guess, a name to a face type of thing. Like the doctors told me that's what it was, but it wasn't until I read your guys's material that I really understood that is what it actually was, because I was second guessing everything. I was still in the mindset that it was something severely wrong with me, health related, and that is not what it was. And once I started reading the symptom lists and the therapist profiles and everything that you guys had gone through too, it was such a sigh of relief, because I I could actually give it credit that that's what it could possibly be.
So it's safe to say that the website contributed to helping you feel validated and empowered in your recovery.
I did feel very much validated and empowered. It gave me hope.
Right.
It really did, because at the time I was going to a therapist that was local.
Mm-hmm.
It was paid for and provided by my employer at the time. It was suggested by them, and I did, after with my symptoms being as severe as they were. And it sounds so bad because I'm sure most people, when they hear me and they hear me talk about it, like you said, they're going to say, well, she didn't have it as bad as I did.
Absolutely.
It couldn't have been anywhere near as bad as I had it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to downplay how bad it was. It was severity, symptoms 24/7,
Mm-hmm.
between 90 and 100% severity. I physically could not get out of bed.
Mm-hmm.
I lost all of my appetite. I could not eat. I developed IBS type symptoms. Like I mentioned before, I had the acid reflux. Um, the dizziness was horrid. I would always explain it to people like it felt like I was wearing beer goggles. Like I had just drank, 6 to 8 beers, and I had a really good, buzz going on, and I hadn't drank a drop. That's how it. So I don't want to downplay and make it sound like it wasn't that bad, because it really was. And when I would go to my local therapist, I would ask her things, especially symptom related. And she would say, oh, well, I've never heard of that before. And at the same time, I was working alongside you, and it was just baffling to me how a certified therapist in the US could tell me that they've never heard of that before. And that's working with the anxiety center. There are multiple things that I loved about it so much, and I used the tools daily, multiple hundred times a day or more. And the Skype calls, just hearing other people talk and discuss what they were going through, and for me to be able to associate to that, really it grounded me and it leveled me out to where, because my mind would always want to trail off. I would come to grips that it was anxiety, and then I would want to go back down the health fear trail like it was something more sinister. And then I would hear that, and it would make me feel better. And then Jim was a big help. I participated in the Skype calls also. But on bad days, I would listen to the Skype calls, and it would make me feel better. Having a therapist that has actually had anxiety, symptomatic anxiety, and has overcome it, you can't beat that.
So yeah, thank you so much. We're really pleased that you have had such a positive experience with the anxietycenter.com website. What was it about our one-on-one therapeutic interaction that you found the most helpful?
I would say that you were very compassionate and thoughtful to what I was going through, because you had went through it as well. That brought me so much comfort and relief, and hope, because you had went through it and you had overcome it. But in the same token, you gave me constructive criticism too. You didn't baby me through it.
Right.
You had me testing my limits, but at a pace that I was comfortable with. And just your understanding of my personal situation, what I was going through. I never felt like I was just a number to you. I was just, client number, whatever.
Right.
I felt like you truly wholeheartedly cared and wanted to see me succeed and get back to my life. I never felt like you were out of touch. Anytime that it wasn't us having a session, if something were to come up and I needed to shoot you a text or send you an email, you were always so responsive. And it helped me to kind of jump over that hurdle that I was going through at that time. You were instrumental in my recovery, and I will say you can overcome your anxiety symptoms by yourself. By just understanding, using the website, which I have never found another website online that explains it to the degree that the Anxiety Center does, with so much detail, that people are able to read it and understand it and relate to it.
Right.
But just that information alone, along with finally accepting that that's what it is and becoming comfortable with your symptoms. I remember you always told me it's a tolerance thing. You've got to learn to tolerate it. And you can learn yourself to tolerate it. But if you want to never have to deal with it again, or if you do deal with it again, it's in a healthy way, versus, the unhealthy way that's resulting in panic attacks and all of that, you do need the help of a therapist that actually knows, understands, and has walked it themselves to get you through that level 2 recovery. The level 2 recovery is instrumental.
Right.
It was to me, because on the surface, you always think that it's the symptoms. The symptoms are what's the problem.
Right.
And the symptoms were just the leaves of a tree, and my second level recovery of my true root issues is what was causing it to keep prolonging the suffering, I guess. It really helped me spot a lot of my problems that kept it going.
Brittany, all of us here at the Anxiety Center, we really want to congratulate you on the great work that you have accomplished. I can speak for the others in saying that we are honored that we were allowed to play a small part in your recovery journey. Is there anything you would like to say to those who are currently struggling with anxiety and considering anxietycenter.com and therapy as an option?
You're worth it. Make that investment for yourself.
Mm.
I know with my struggle, money was always top of mind. And having dealt locally with a licensed therapist was in no comparison to the quality of therapy and help that I got from using an anxiety center therapist. It sounds like a lot at first, and I did the weekly therapy sessions.
Right.
And then once I kind of got back on my feet, I was able to go to biweekly, then monthly. But I always looked at it like that's a large investment to make.
It is.
But people don't realize how often we ate out a lot, and we cut back on eating out so much and we took that money and invested it into my own health. And because of that short-term investment, I'm able to do everything that I want to do every single day. I get to enjoy my kids. I get to laugh, and anxiety is so far behind me. It is an afterthought. I do not think about it at all. I think about it differently.
Right.
The just make the investment.
Yeah.
Make the investment. Join monthly. If you can't afford to do the yearly membership, which is not expensive at all, for the material that you get, the help that you get, and the information, it is minute in comparison to how quickly it is going to give you some solace and just take some of the relief off, because you are worrying so much about it. And then again, as far as the therapy goes, I know some people can't afford it. Their money's tight. Ours was, but we made the commitment. We budgeted. We made the investment, and it was worth it. Every single penny was worth it.
Right. Again, thank you so much, Brittany, for taking the time this evening to share your journey with us. In conclusion, I just was wondering if you had any closing comments for others about anxiety recovery that you would really like them to know as we end our time together here this evening.
I would suggest over and over to anybody who is pondering whether or not to use an anxiety center therapist, I would say go with it 100%, because they are going to help you so much more than what a local person is, because they've lived it. They've gone through it. They know how the symptoms feel. They know what you're going through.
Right.
And that means so much to be able to talk to somebody and have them help you through it when they themselves have gone through it, because I've worked with a person that's never gone through it before locally. And I feel like if I were to compare both, I got nothing from the local person other than, sadly, she completed my leave of absence from work papers. That was that was sadly about the only beneficial thing that she had given me, was time to recover at my own pace. And I was fortunate that I was given that from my employer. But I feel like my true recovery was largely due to the Anxiety Center and working with you. Thank you so much. And thank you to the Anxiety Center, really.
You betcha. God bless you.